I'm sure that anyone who has played a 4X strategy game is familiar with Sid Meier's Civilization series, and if you are a fan of the series like me, you've played more than one of them, and maybe even have played the current game, Sid Meier's Civilization 6. Let's take a look at where it all began. The birth of Civilization started in 1982 with the formation of Microprose Software Incorporated, a video game publisher and developer founded by Bill Steely and Sid Meier. With Bill Steely, a retired military pilot, and Sid Meier, the programmer, most of their early games throughout the 1980s were aviation-based. In 1987, the first of their games to feature the trend of putting Meier's name in the title of his games was Sid Meier's Pirates. It was not, as you might think, Meier himself who came up with the idea, it was instead his Microprose partner Bill Steely. Steely said that with a game from Microprose simply named Pirates, it would clash with the slew of flight simulator games they were known for. But with Meier's name in the title, fans of the games would see his name and be more likely to play it. After the release of Sid Meier's Railroad Tycoon, Meier and game designer Bruce Shelley wanted to take the mechanics of Railroad Tycoon, where the player had many options and could have their own unique playthrough, and make a game where the player could rule a whole civilization. Both Meier and Shelley loved the Empire games, and while discussing them, Meier challenged Shelley to come up with 10 things he would change about Empire. Shelley came up with 12. Meier had a prototype ready by May of 1990, and Meier and Shelley were underway. The game went through many changes, such as making the game turn-based rather than real-time after coding and playtesting to see what worked. Only near the end of development was the name Civilization adopted. Though part of the inspiration, the board game Civilization from Avalon Hill was not the sole influence, nor a direct copy. Nevertheless, Microprose didn't want to take the chance and negotiated a license to use the name Civilization. Though the game wasn't given much promotion, as was the case with all of Meier's games, which Microprose weren't too fond of, the game was released in early 1991 for the IBM personal computer. And by word of mouth, the game grew to critical success, initiating a golden age for Microprose and the 4X strategy game genre: explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Civilization's main objective is, as the box art says, build an empire to stand the test of time. And by that, it means winning by one of two ways: either conquering every other civilization in the game, or by winning the space race and making it to Alpha Centauri. It wasn't until the third installment that there was more than two ways to win. After opening the game and sitting through the introduction, you are faced with a few choices, first of which is the level difficulty you wish to play as, ranging from Chieftain to Emperor. Next is how many opposing civilizations you wish to play against. Then it's time to pick your own civilization. You have less options if you pick less to play against. Then if you want to, you can name your leader something other than default. You can also rename your cities as well. Your first task is to settle your first city. Following that, you'll have a few options of what you wish your city to produce. And in the city, it will tell you how long each of those productions will take to complete. At first, you only have a few options because you haven't yet discovered any new technologies. The mechanics of the game are generally straightforward and pretty easy to pick up, though going back to a game from 1991 after playing the newest installment of the game, which came out only a few years ago, can be a little disorienting. One of the next parts of the game you might come across is meeting another civilization. When you first choose your leader, there will be a screen letting you know the strengths of the civilization and what technologies to start with based on that historical civilization's specialties. One of the characters, if you are familiar with the lore of the series, is the leader of India, Gandhi. Just like in real life, he was a peaceful man. That same peacefulness is relayed in this game, as his hostility level is at the lowest it can be, a 1 out of 255. But those who know the Civilization series will know that the Civilization version of Gandhi can be a vicious, bloodthirsty ruler. This is all thanks in part to the ideology aspect. You see, when a civilization discovers a new ideology, they encompass it. And when a civilization discovers democracy, their hostility level drops by 2 points. The problem is, when Gandhi discovers democracy, with his hostility already being the lowest possible score of 1, there was nowhere for it to go. So it rolls back around to the highest number, 255, making Gandhi the most hostile civilization in the game. Though in order to actually get this bug to occur, it takes a certain scenario which is hard to pull off. In further games, they kept this buggy mechanic and made it more common, because it was funny and it was sort of a trademark for the games. For example, in Civilization 5, when a civilization completes research on the Manhattan Project, they unlock the ability to build nukes. Unlike real life, yet very much like the Civilization games, Gandhi's nuke score is a whole 4 points higher than any other civilization, making him extremely nuke-happy. Going back to a game almost 30 years old compared to its current descendant, surprised me at how similar they were. That just goes to show you that that style of game is still relevant to pick up and enjoy even now. It was also a pleasant surprise to see some of the aspects of the first game which didn't translate over to its predecessors, some of which I enjoyed encountering. An element I enjoyed was when discovering new technologies, there was a page of information about it. I'm not sure if this was something that I just missed in the newer Civilization games or not, but nonetheless, I liked it. There was also this opportunity to add to my palace, which was something else I hadn't seen before and also enjoyed, though I couldn't figure out if this part had any real purpose or not. Then, there were the quizzes. I might have liked them more if I had a manual, like the game tells me to use, and I was actually able to look up and find the answers and not have to rely on my current knowledge of what unlocks with each discovery. Before I get to the negatives, this one is kind of in between a pro and a con. So when you run out of money in this game, you don't go into having debt and your science stops and your people get unhappy and they eventually revolt, like in the newer ones. Instead, a building of yours gets destroyed, so you get some money back, but it will keep decreasing until you lose another building unless you raise taxes or make up for the money loss with making more, of course. For me though, my civilization got a little too big, and no matter how many tax increases I did, or how many banks I built, I kept losing money until I spiraled out of control and lost all my buildings, and eventually I gave up. Other than that, there isn't much bad to say about this game, other than saying that it's a more simplified, lo-fi version of the games now. One aspect that bugged me a little bit, but wasn't too big of a deal for a game of this era, was how little sound they used. For the majority of the time playing it, there was no sound. Only when an occasional event would happen, like a battle, a new discovery, or a revolt, will there actually be a snippet of sound or music. In the 1990s, genres such as the first-person shooter, fighting games, and 4X strategy games began to rise, and the home console became the more preferred source of gaming rather than arcades. In 1991, alongside the release of Civilization, were games such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Mega Man 4, and Battletoads. Coming soon. Compared to those games, Civilization stands out. It looks nothing like those games, and maybe that was just the change that gaming of the 1990s was looking for. All in all, I enjoyed looking at Civilization's roots, and I think I'll give it a 5. Now if you'll excuse me, I have some Civ 6 to play.